I'm fairly new to Evansville. Lived here for about a month and a half. My wife and I are pastors and executive officers with the Salvation Army. We moved to Evansville from a city of Quincy, Illinois, on the western side of the state, right on the Missouri border. We moved here about maybe a month and a half ago. We have two main responsibilities in Evansville. We serve as pastors and executive directors of the Salvation Army in Evansville branch. We also serve as Southwest Indiana area coordinators, which covers a multi-county area on the southwestern part of the state. For schooling, it's a bit all over the place. I took a non-traditional route, I think, into the professional world. I've been with the Salvation Army my whole life, but started my current occupation about 8 years ago. I've gone to school at Indiana Wesleyan University, and I'm currently hoping to go back to school for another degree in 2024. Part of Salvation Army officership, so when I say pastors and executive directors of the Salvation Army, our title are officers. So we're licensed clergy, but we also have executive director responsibilities for the nonprofit administration. And each Salvation Army branch in the world functions in that similar structure, that we are both a place of worship and we're also a place of nonprofit service. That's why our mission is, we're serving and suffering humanity, and we're also preaching the gospel. And so I came into this job, like I said, about 8 years ago. It wasn't what I intended, what my own plan was for my life, but God has a unique way of getting you onto His will, regardless of what you want to do. And I couldn't have asked for just a better 8 years. Hasn't all been easy, but it's all been completely worth it. I grew up in Nebraska, was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. And from the time I was 5 years old, this is going to sound a little different. From the time I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a doctor. And I remember being 5 or 6 years old, sitting in our home right outside of Council Bluffs, Iowa, where we lived. And there was a documentary on the TV and about a bunch of surgeons. And they were explaining this procedure for pediatric neurology. And it just stuck with me. I didn't know what they were doing, but I knew that they were helping people. And so it was kind of at that point I had a little bit of a light bulb moment in my life, as much as you can when you're 6 years old. And I knew that I wanted to be a doctor. As I grew older and went to high school and elementary school, I wanted to become a pediatric neurologist, and particularly help youth under the age of 18 with either mental illness or development disorders. I pursued that up until about a month before I graduated high school. God started to shut some doors in my life and led me to Salvation Army officership. So my path to Salvation Army service has been, I would say, convoluted by most people's standards. And when I was 13 years old, I had an experience where I knew God was calling, is the word I would use, was calling me into this line of ministry, this vocation. And I ran from it. I was at a time in my life when I was totally broken. My dad had just unexpectedly passed away about a year prior, maybe. I had a friend who just committed suicide right around that same time. And I was 13 years old, totally lost, completely broken, and God showed up in a pretty incredible way in my life and gave me a vision of me wearing a Salvation Army officer uniform, which is what I'm dressed in right now, and said, "This is the servant I want you to be." I ran from it. Wasn't interested at all. Was not interested in the work, wasn't interested in the responsibility. All of my family, most of them are Salvation Army officers, either active or retired, including my mom and including my dad at the time of his death. So I ran from it. I wasn't interested in it. And it took a while of wrestling with it throughout high school. But there was one moment when my youth pastor in Chicago, where I went to high school, was hosting this small group for teenagers. And I went over to his home. It was a youth group attached and associated with the Salvation Army. And went over to his home, and it was food and football. So we would watch football, and we would have a ton of food because we're all teenagers, so we eat constantly. And I remember walking in the room, and there's just this misfit group of people in his living room. There's football on the TV, and some people have Bibles and some people don't. And we sat down, we just started talking about life. And it wasn't a religious experience like I'd experienced in my childhood. It was something deeper than that. I saw what I think community can be. And that resonated with me. And it showed me that if I'm going to be a part of the Salvation Army, that's what I'm going to dedicate myself to, is bringing people of all walks of life and all backgrounds and ethnicities to the same table. And that's what I think I love most about Evansville, is we have underneath not only the Salvation Army brand, but also the whole city. We have so many people of different walks of life that can come and have a seat, and we can talk about our experiences and our different lives in a really unique way. It's a lot, and so pretty good example. We have a program here in the Salvation Army Evansville called Sally's Kitchen. It is a program that operates for 2 hours every single day from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And in 2 hours we serve every day between 400 to 600 people out of our facility here. And if you ever come take a tour, I encourage you to do it. The number one question you have is, how do they get it done? And it's only by sheer force of will and by an incredible team of volunteers and staff that make it happen. Those 400 to 600 people, some of them work for us now because they came through Sally's Kitchen and they were served a meal and realized that this is a place that can help them. And this is a place that can change them. Some of those people have gone on to be supporters of our programming, whether financially or giving their time or other resources. That's just a small example, but it isn't just the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army is a group of people. It's an identity that has many people who come together to make something happen, and to, whether it's a program or it's serving a meal or it's after school or across any of our departments, the whole mission breaks down to a group of people coming together to want to change their community. And it's humbling to be a part of it. Every day is a new adventure. You never quite know what you're going to experience when I come in through the doors. The Salvation Army mission boils down to two different parts. There's preaching the gospel and there's washing people's feet. And both of those things have different expressions. There's different forms that they take in our services and in our programming. And in that mission, in that idea that we can be a social agency for social change, you never quite know what you're going to get, but you always know that you're going to get to love someone. And that is, for my wife and I, and for me particularly, the most rewarding part. I get to come into this job every single day, and it's more than just a job. It's who I am. And I get to come in every single day, and I get to love someone because they're made in the image of God and because they're simply worthy of it. I don't care about their background. I don't care about the bad things that they may or may not have done. What matters to me is that they're here and that I have an opportunity to show them the love of God. And for some people, that's transformational because they haven't been loved in a non-discriminatory way. For some of them, the church has hurt them. For some of them, they've been hurt by family or friends or by other roadblocks along the way in their life. And so for them to come into the Salvation Army, whether it's for a meal or whether it's just for a place to get out of the cold, find out more about our services, every single day I get the chance to love people. And that is far and away the most rewarding and changing part of my position.